Welcome and thank you for joining us today. You're listening to Society Bites Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer.
And I'm Sherry Himmer, and this is Authentically You, social interaction for the mind and soul.
For the next 25 minutes, we talk about healing and growth from the inside out. Remember, you are 100% responsible for your happiness, joy, and well-being.
And so last time we left off with introducing the art and science of mindfulness and maybe taking this time of quarantining as a way, because either we really need mindfulness to get away from the chaos of our home or the intensity of the interaction in our home, or because we're feeling so alone. Either way, we probably have an opportunity to try this out, to try to incorporate in our lives. And from the last segment, we learned that we really need to do it on a daily basis to be able to physiologically change aspects of our brains.
Right. And so the research comes in that neuroscientists have discovered that meditation can reduce pain by twice the amount of morphine. I mean, that's phenomenal. Imagine the level of chronic illness medications that are being taken right now, that you could actually do better on your own by practicing mindfulness. So that's a doctor visit less, and it's a little bit less money out of pocket. That's the first thing. And mindfulness is not addictive. And the other research that we quoted in the last segment is that if you spend cumulatively 27 minutes a day of practicing mindfulness, you statistically reduce the gray matter in your amygdala, which is your fight, flight, freeze, or faint. In other words, it's your anxiety and stress indicator. It's a tough time as it is. And with suicides going up, marriage or divorces skyrocket. Divorce attorneys right now their phones are ringing off the hook. We've got domestic abuse just running rampant because people are being clustered in, right? Mm-hmm. On your own individual basis, if you start practicing how to take care of yourself first, with the intent that you could then serve others, which is, I think, the Christian way of doing it, then you can start having those relationships you want. We are going to cover in a segment. Now, I don't know when because everything's getting pushed off. But we are going to talk about how do you deal with somebody who's just not in the know. They're almost constantly unconsciously incompetent on their emotional intelligence. So the bully in the family, the abuser in the family, the one who's not present in the family. How do you deal with someone like that? What if we just start with you? You start taking care of you. You're in a much better position to then work with that other person.
And maybe in quarantine, you realize, wait a minute, I can't really fix everything in my family. Maybe we're having great moments in quarantine, but sometimes it feels frustrating. And you might see more than you want to see on a daily basis because you're just stuck with each other. And you're always going to have more influence with yourself, and you'll influence more with others as you only focus on yourself.
That's very good. And we want to focus, again, remember first half, second half of life. In your first half of life, you've become very good at doing certain things, but it's at the expense of the complementary traits. We want to bring that balance into it. So by the same token, you want to bring balance from the cognitive to the subconscious. We're overcompensating in the world today with our cognitive. Some people, that's the engineer type mindset. But then there's the other side where we're overcompensating on the emotions. If you're very empathetic or empath driven, okay, so you can read it, but that's not getting you where you need to go. If you're an engineer type thinker, everything's logical and practical, and you don't have much tolerance for people who are emotional, okay, that's a strength, but it's not balanced. The idea is to bring them both together, working in harmony, so I can make decisions in the true sense of intuition. Intuition is based on experiences and a gut feeling, coupled with statistical evidence or well thought out plans. That's where we're trying to go with mindfulness. We're trying to bridge that chasm between the upstairs and the downstairs. So we're going to continue this discussion on mindfulness now. So the idea is when we merge the subconscious with the conscious, we attain a balance between the two brains. That's called theta brain waves, while retaining access to the subconscious state. So the subconscious is an alpha brain wave, and it retains a link to the conscious, which is a beta. So let's do this again. Your cognitive thought process is in the beta. Your subconscious is in the alpha. The optimal place is in the theta, combined together. It's where you hit when you're in REM sleep. That's a theta. In a REM, you're totally present, right? If you're dreaming,
it's vivid, it's real.
Okay, I had one the other night, and I can't remember what. This was an interesting experience. I don't talk that much, do I? In my sleep. Don't look at me that way. My perception is
just open a can of worms. You do know that, right? Okay.
You need to be careful.
You and talking in your sleep, it does not happen frequently.
That's what I'm trying to say.
But when it happens, it's like kaboom. And the other night.
Okay, I was in a theta brainwave, right?
Like you never mumble in your sleep. You shout. You move things. I mean, we could go back to when we were first married, and
that was a whole different world.
No,
right?
but the other night was a whole different world when you did something with your arm when you did it. So you are very physical when you do.
Okay. I don't remember that part.
When you shout in your sleep, I should say.
So what was happening in my?
I get to say what you said.
Well, I got to tell him lead up to it, right? So what was happening is that I was either in a car, on a motorcycle, on a bicycle, something. I was moving quite rapidly. I could have even been running. That part's very vague. But I was coming fast at a red brick wall. And it was like Harry Potter at the train station. I hit that wall and I went whoosh, into a whole different world. It was low lighting with little bulbs above, almost like in a train station. But I just flew through this wall.
And you shouted out to me and said, "Holy quapanoli."
Well, I think you're filtering
No,
because you're asleep.
You did not get the L out in holy. You said, "Holy quapanoli." And I was like, what? And then you're mad at me for waking you up because I say, what?
I know it. She yells at me. I said, "Holy crapanoli." I remember saying that now after you woke me up from my
where
sleep.
Where did that say?
And I don't know. But that would be a classic. I'm in REM. I'm deep. And then you startled me out of my sleep. And so I was in that theta brainwave because everything, I could taste it. I could feel it. I could sense the darkness. I could even sense the wetness of the molecules in the air.
Oh, wow.
It was really vivid. Sorry about that. Okay.
There's wet molecules in the air today.
That was the theta experience. And so when we do mindfulness, we have that ability. Imagine being in that capacity, awake, and being able to do it intentionally. I've had clients who've gotten so good at this that they've been able to get fillings using mindfulness.
Can be used in dental.
The Esdale state in hypnosis means you could even have a surgery performed on you, and you're it's just in a nice.
I'm not signing up for that, but
hypnotic state. But imagine just getting yourself to that position. You can bring balance. You can take the stress and you can take the anxiety and bring balance to your space. That's what we're talking about. That ability to heal, that ability to be mindful. If I can remember, I need to tell the story of Josh Waitzkin at the end of the healing power of mindfulness. So learning mindfulness is not as important as learning to live mindfully, meaning having full self-awareness. Mindfulness, or the basic tenets of mindfulness, are roughly 5,000 years old. The psychological application of mindfulness, however, is fairly new. And I know that when I first was introduced to it, that was the kumbaya thing. I was picturing people sitting with their legs crossed and putting their thumb and their index fingers together, resting their wrists on their knees, thinking this is just a bunch of Gumby stuff. You know, it doesn't make sense. And so when I started delving into it and realizing the powerful healing mechanisms of it, coming from my very left brain approach to the world, it was quite revealing and massively healing for me and where I've gone through. Now, there were rough times going through that. And like I said, mindfulness isn't designed just to make you feel kumbaya all day long. I have wrestled, I've sweated, and I've come out of there just physically exhausted and angry in my mindfulness experiences because I'm processing.
So I think that's a really important takeaway point about mindfulness is that it is for the point of processing. And so it isn't always going to be this easy experience, this like lounging experience.
Exactly right. Yeah. Mindfulness is often associated with the Buddha, who is credited with one of the early attempts at understanding the human mind. And I'm going to give a couple mindfulness definitions to help you understand. It is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, to the present moment and non-judgmentally. You want to do the next one?
Bringing one's complete attention to the present experience on a moment-to-moment basis.
Now, people will say, I just can't focus. I get bouncing everywhere. Yeah. Exactly. That's a first half of life.
So you're basically practicing attention skills.
Yeah. Imagine your children in school.
Yeah,
I can't pay attention in school to save my life. I can't pay attention in church.
Well,
I'm bored to death.
Mindfulness in the last 2 years has been a huge upswinging in classrooms, and there are tools and curriculum now surrounding mindfulness. Kids know what it means. I mean, in my classroom, we practice it every day at the sound of a chime, and did so also as a school.
That's
whole school.
Beautiful.
So it's going to be great to see what happens with this generation, that they have an understanding of an idea of what mindfulness is. Yeah.
Mindfulness involves the self-regulation of attention. So in other words, it's how I actually can sit through church, because my attention, it's hard for me to stay attention. My mind's going a million miles an hour. So I've learned how to slow it down, but I've also learned how to channel it, which allows me to sit there. And I don't do it really well every week, but for the most part, I can now go into public places, because I'm a pretty good introvert, and be completely comfortable.
So knowing when you need to turn that mindfulness drive on, recognizing the places that might be a challenge for someone would be a good way to know when to pull up that mindfulness skill. But being at home right now under quarantine is a great time to start this.
And you're actually referring to trigger busters, because mindfulness is a part of trigger buster, right?
Yep.
So John Kabat-Zinn said, meditation is simply being yourself and knowing something about who that is. It is about coming to realize that you are on a path whether you like it or not, namely, the path that is your life.
There is no right or wrong way to exercise mindfulness. However, it is important that you deliberately practice it with the intent to find yourself, create balance, and learn to grow from the process. If you're typically in your head, you'll find that your thoughts may run like stallions through the field.
So instead of trying to rein these stallions in and allow yourself to get frustrated, which is the common thing with those that stuck in their head, and the first time through, they'll go through the motions with me, and then they'll just look at me and go, I couldn't focus. I was this, I was that. They don't know how to deliberately practice. They've never been taught how to slow life down.
So don't expect like, oh yeah, the first time, I see it.
Oh yeah, it's a coming to kumbaya moment. It's not.
This is going to come with practice.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be a first-time success.
Yeah, it's like trying to ride a bike the first time.
Exactly.
It's going to take a minute. So instead of trying to rein in these thoughts, accept the reality that your brain is running wild. It's okay. But then ask the question, and notice this what-ifing again. What if I can slow down my mind with practice? What would that look like? And then how would that feel? And the very thought that you what-ifed is throwing a whole different set of neurons back into the story. And now you start the bridging. And when you bridge, you start connecting the up and downstairs, and it takes time. You got to the where you are with a lot of practice. You've got thousands of experiences in school and in meetings and in churches where you've let your mind go wild. You've been trying to talk to your wife or your husband, and your mind is everywhere else but there. So yesterday when we were talking on the phone, I could tell you that you weren't present, because your delay between my question and your answer means you weren't there. So I ended the conversation really quick, and it was no offense because I knew you had a lot going on. I just needed to get a quick message to you, and then I was off the phone. But Sherry's mind was going everywhere because she was dealing with, schoolwork, children, and I could hear the crumb crunchers in the background.
Yeah, right. I'm going.
So I knew that I was interrupting. So for her to delay 3 or 4 seconds off